Welcome to Next Gen Tech. Talent and Trends by Sequoia. Connect the space where we explore, with clarity and purpose, the real impact of talent, technology, and artificial intelligence on organizations. We are Silva, and today we invite you to reflect with us
on the decisions shaping the present and future of the IT industry. Here, we don't just discuss headhunting, AI, or tech consulting. We discuss what truly drives people: the need to grow, adapt, and lead.
This episode is for you. If you're ready to take control of your career, lead change, or learn something new, let's get started.
Yeah, let's dive into it.
Because right now, as we speak, somewhere out there, Silicon Valley, London, Tokyo, a Fortune 500 company just set $50 million on fire.
Honestly, probably more than 50 million.
Right. And they didn't do it on purpose, obviously. They did it by treating artificial intelligence like just a standard software update, instead of recognizing it as an entirely new species of workflow.
Yeah, a completely different animal.
Exactly. So we're looking at this reality today where the theoretical promise of AI is just clashing violently with the actual physical limitations of corporate execution.
And that $50 million bonfire, it's happening way more often than anyone wants to admit right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we are completely past the hype cycle. The theory is done, like everyone knows what a large language model is. Everyone has seen the parlor tricks.
Right, the fun little chatbots.
Exactly. What we are really dissecting today in this deep dive is the brutal reality of execution. Why are so many incredibly well-funded, highly intelligent teams building these brilliant AI systems that just totally fall apart the second they try to deploy them?
To really ground this, we need to introduce you to Elena. So Elena is a CTO at a rapidly growing fintech.
Yeah.
And she serves as this perfect anchor because honestly, if you look at her track record in the early stages, she did everything flawlessly.
She really did.
By traditional management standards, she was running an absolute masterclass.
Yeah, she was the poster child for how to do this right on paper.
On paper, yeah.
So let's break down her initial phases, because understanding her success is kind of the only way to understand the tragedy of her eventual failure.
Oh, totally.
So in phase 1 and phase 2, she successfully aligned her C-suite. Now, for anyone who's ever tried to get a legacy executive board to fully back a disruptive technology, you know that requires immense political capital.
Oh, yeah. Usually the CFO is looking at AI and saying, oh, great, we can automate 40% of our staff tomorrow.
Right. They just see cost cutting.
Yeah. And the CTO has to walk them back and explain that it's not magic. But Elena actually managed to bridge that gap.
She did. She didn't just get them to nod along. She got them to actually open the checkbook. She set realistic expectations at the top. But she also did the really hard work on the ground. She dismantled her team's replacement anxiety.
Which is massive.
It's an immense cultural hurdle. When you drop an AI coding assistant onto a development floor, the immediate psychological reaction from a senior engineer isn't, oh, great, a new tool.
Right. It's, am I going to lose my job?
Exactly. This machine writes boilerplate code in 10 seconds that used to take me 2 hours. Am I going to be obsolete in 18 months?
Yeah.
And if a team operates out of that existential fear, they will, subconsciously sabotage the adoption process.
Oh, they'll find every single bug.
Yep. They'll highlight every hallucination and basically build a case for why the AI shouldn't be used at all.
But Elena neutralized that fear.
Yeah.
She flipped the narrative from replacement to elevation.
She did.
She convinced her engineers that they weren't just writing syntax anymore, they were becoming system architects.
Mm-hmm.
And she pushed even further by building tool-agnostic foundations.
Which was just a brilliant strategic move on her part.
Because her team wasn't blindly reliant on one specific vendor.
Right, because if you lock yourself into one single provider, you're at the mercy of their pricing, their downtime, their specific model biases.
Yeah, you're trapped.
But Elena's engineers, they actually understood the underlying logic of the LLMs. They were fluent in the mechanics. They mastered what we call intent-based engineering.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second because intent-based engineering gets thrown around as a buzzword a lot.
Oh, all the time.
When we say intent-based engineering, we aren't just talking about a developer typing a clever prompt into a chat window.
Yeah, no, not at all. So traditional programming is imperative. It's deterministic. You write a line of code that says, if X happens, do Y.
Right, very rigid.
Very rigid. You give the computer a step-by-step recipe, but intent-based engineering flips that entirely because you're dealing with a probabilistic system now.
Okay.
You don't tell the model exactly how to do the task. You declare your intent, basically, the exact parameters of the desired outcome, and you build guardrails around it.
So it's more about setting the boundaries.
Exactly. You might say, analyze this unstructured data stream, extract financial anomalies, format them into a JSON object, and if the confidence score drops below 85%, flag it for human review.
Wow.
You're setting up context windows, designing few-shot learning examples. You're orchestrating the environment so the AI just arrives at the correct conclusion on its own.
Okay, so if you are Elena in this scenario,
Yeah.
right, you have a C-suite that is fully supportive
Yeah.
and funding the project.
Yep.
You have a dev team that is fearless, highly motivated, and deeply understands this probabilistic logic. They aren't vendor locked. They've mastered intent-based engineering. To me, honestly, that sounds like crossing the finish line.
It does sound like it.
Like if I'm managing a baseball team, it feels like I've just assembled a roster of absolute all-stars. They know the playbook perfectly, the front office is backing them, the fans are cheering.
They're ready to go.
But then they step onto the field and they somehow lose the game by 40 runs.
Yeah.
Every single time.
Yeah.
If the setup is that perfect, how is failure even possible?
Well, it's possible because the game they prepared for isn't the game they actually have to play.
What do you mean?
Despite all that flawless setup, the inevitable moment arrives for Elena. The board of directors calls her into the room, they look at all this brilliant foundational work, and they ask the one question that determines the survival of any project.
Where is the tangible ROI?
Exactly. Where is the return on this massive investment?
And she has nothing to show them except, like, demos.
Right. Demos and sandboxes. She hits a total brick wall. Her team built these brilliant proofs of concept, but when it came to scaling this AI to production...
Getting it to the actual customers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Integrating it into the core banking product, building actual agentic workflows that operate autonomously, they were entirely paralyzed.
They were trapped in the production chasm.
Yep, the production chasm.
That is just a chilling visual for any executive listening right now. The graveyard where theoretically sound AI strategies go to die.
It's a very crowded graveyard, unfortunately.
Let's define the geography of this graveyard a bit. Like, why is the gap between the sandbox and the production environment so lethal?
Well, you have to look at what a sandbox actually is. It's an isolated, sterilized environment. It's basically a vacuum.
Yeah.
So let's say Elena's team builds a proof of concept for an AI agent that reviews loan applications. In the sandbox, they feed it 50 perfectly formatted PDF applications.
Nice and clean.
Very clean. The AI reads them, analyzes the credit history flawlessly, and spits out a 99% accurate approval recommendation.
And the board sees that and says, wow, we're going to save $20 million in underwriter salaries next year.
Exactly. It gives everyone a completely false sense of security.
Because it proved that the technology works.
Right. It proved it works in a vacuum. But deploying that into an enterprise-wide workflow is an entirely different universe.
How so?
In production, you aren't dealing with 50 pristine PDFs. You are dealing with 10,000 applications a day. Some are PDFs, some are bluey JPEGs taken from a cracked iPhone, some are missing pages.
Oh, man. Yeah. The real world is messy.
It's incredibly messy, and the AI agent isn't just reading them. It has to perceive this messy environment, make a decision, route the data to a legacy database, ping a third-party API, and execute all of this across the entire enterprise infrastructure.
All while adhering to strict data privacy laws.
Exactly. And if it makes a mistake, it's not just a funny hallucination in a demo.
No, it's a regulatory lawsuit because you just denied a loan based on, like, a hallucinated credit score.
Precisely. So moving from a safe proof of concept to a live production-grade agentic workflow requires a level of engineering resilience that most internal teams just do not possess.
Wow.
And this brings us to the core realization that kind of changes everything. Scaling AI to production is not a technology problem.
I want to hit pause on that for a second because that completely flips the script.
It does.
When companies can't get an AI project to scale, their immediate instinct is always to blame the silicon.
Always.
They say, oh, the LLM isn't smart enough yet, or the context window is too small, or, we'll just wait for the next model.
Blaming the technology is just a defense mechanism. It's an excuse. The bottleneck is not the silicon. The bottleneck is the human structure trying to implement the silicon. It is a capacity and talent architecture problem.
So if we broaden this out from Elena's specific fintech to the entire industry landscape, we're basically seeing this exact same wall everywhere.
Everywhere, yes.
Why do these well-trained internal enterprise teams that have done the homework and understand the tech, Why do they fail to cross this chasm?
Because internal teams lack two critical ingredients that you just cannot simply train into existence:
Which are?
initial velocity and specialized capacity. Think about Elena's all-star developers. Yes, they understand intent-based engineering, but they also have day jobs.
Right, they're maintaining the existing app.
They're fixing bugs in the current payment gateway. They're dealing with server outages. They do not have the sheer uninterrupted velocity required to build an entirely new operational paradigm from scratch.
That makes a lot of sense.
And they lack the hyper-specialized capacity needed for the incredibly weird nuances of production-grade AI deployment.
This brings up a phrase from our research that I think perfectly captures the delusion happening in boardrooms right now. Corporate hallucination.
Oh, I love that phrase.
Right. We talk endlessly about AI models hallucinating, making up facts confidently. But here, the lens is turned back on the executives. An AI strategy that is mapped out beautifully on a whiteboard with strategic pillars and projected revenue bumps. It is literally a hallucination if it doesn't have a high-performance execution engine attached to it.
A strategy document without an execution engine is basically just corporate fan fiction.
Corporate fan fiction.
You can draw the most elegant system architecture in the world, but if you don't have the talent architecture ready to build the bridge across that chasm, it's just an illusion of progress.
It makes me think of an analogy. Imagine you have a team of brilliant automotive executives, right? And they design an F1 racing engine on paper.
Okay, I see where this is going.
It's a masterpiece of engineering. The math is perfect. The theoretical horsepower is off the charts. They are high-fiving in the boardroom. And then they take that F1 engine and they try to drop it into the chassis of a 1998 Honda Civic.
Oh, no!
That Civic is their company's legacy infrastructure and their existing talent architecture.
Yeah,
What happens?
So it falls apart.
The second they hit the gas, the sheer torque of that F1 engine rips the transmission to shreds, snaps the axles, and the car goes absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
The strategy was brilliant, the engine was real, but the chassis couldn't handle the velocity.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. And, we actually have vital data validation to back this up. It isn't just theory.
Let's hear the numbers.
If you look at the recent numbers from Gartner, they report that up to 85% of AI projects fail to deliver their intended business value.
85%.
85%. Let that sink in for a second. For a technology that literally every CEO on Earth agrees is a fundamental revolution, an 85% failure rate is staggering.
Wow. When you see a number that high, you just have to acknowledge that it's systemic.
Exactly.
It's not just a few companies having a string of bad luck. The system itself is rejecting the technology. I want to deep dive into the why behind that 85%. You mentioned the chassis breaking. Why do organizations so dramatically underestimate the complexity of this deployment?
Well, it comes down to underestimating the gravity of legacy habits. When you're in the sandbox, like we talked about, you're weightless. You're playing with new toys in a greenfield environment.
Right.
But production-level deployment means integrating this hyper-fast, probabilistic intelligence into systems that are bogged down by literally decades of history.
So what actually happens on the ground? Like, take me down to the developer level when Elena's team tries to cross this chasm alone.
They experience a brutal regression to the mean. Internal teams, they're intimately familiar with their company's technical debt.
Oh, they know exactly where all the bodies are buried.
Exactly. They know where the code is fragile. They know that if they touch a certain SQL database, the whole billing system might just crash.
Yeah.
Plus, they are heavily burdened by compliance fears, legal, data privacy, InfoSec reviews. So when they try to build an AI workflow, their first instinct is to wrap it in the safety of their legacy operational habits.
Let's get technical on that for a second, because earlier we talked about deterministic versus probabilistic systems. This seems like the exact fault line where the F1 engine rips the Civic apart.
It is the absolute core of the conflict. Legacy enterprise infrastructure is entirely deterministic. A relational database expects a specific query, and it returns a specific, predictable row of data.
Everything is rigid and linear.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you introduce a generative AI agent. That agent is probabilistic. It infers, it guesses, it hallucinates, it generates text that's structurally sound, but might vary every single time you ask it the exact same question.
And when you try to force that probabilistic output into a deterministic legacy database,
The system panics.
it just freaks out.
Exactly. The legacy system literally doesn't know how to handle a response that isn't perfectly formatted. So what does the internal engineering team do?
What do?
They start writing endless lines of exception code. They build this massive, clunky middleware to force the AI to act like a deterministic system.
Oh, wow.
They spend 90% of their time fighting the technology instead of utilizing it. And every time they want to push an update, they have to run it through a 6-month InfoSec review process that was designed for traditional software.
So the gravity of the old world just pulls them back under.
Yeah.
This perfectly explains a phenomenon that, honestly, always baffles outsiders. You look at these massive multinational corporations, they have budgets in the billions, armies of Ivy League engineers, and yet they move so agonizingly slowly compared to, like, a 20-person startup in a garage.
Because the startup doesn't have legacy gravity.
Exactly. The massive corporation gets bogged down by its own history. The quicksand of their infrastructure literally swallows their AI velocity.
The velocity just drops to zero, the project stalls out, the board gets frustrated, and the AI strategy dies in the chasm. That is the anatomy of the 85% failure rate.
Okay, so we have diagnosed the illness.
We have.
The sandbox is deceiving. The production chasm is a graveyard. Static strategies are just hallucinations. And the F1 engine destroys the legacy chassis.
A pretty bleak picture.
Very bleak. But identifying the chasm is great. It just isn't enough. For the executive or the engineer listening right now who is nodding along, feeling the acute pain of that failure rate, how do they actually build the bridge? Like, what is the paradigm shift here?
Well, the shift starts with accepting a very hard truth. You have to completely abandon traditional linear deployment models.
Completely.
Completely. In the AI era, linear deployment is dead.
Okay, by linear deployment, we are talking about the classic waterfall method, right? Where you spend 6 months gathering requirements, 6 months building the architecture, 3 months in QA testing, and then you finally push a release.
Exactly. That model assumes a static environment. It assumes the technology you're building on today will be the exact same technology a year from now.
Which is definitely not true with AI.
Not at all. Generative AI is compounding so quickly that if you take 18 months to build a product, the underlying foundation model will have iterated 3 times.
Your product will be obsolete before it even hits the server.
Exactly. So you can't build linearly. You have to adopt a test and fail fast methodology.
But I want to be careful here, because fail fast is another one of those Silicon Valley cliches that people completely misinterpret.
Oh, totally.
It doesn't mean deploying broken code to your customers and apologizing later.
No, not at all. In this context, it means aggressive AI-Augmented Co-creation. You aren't failing in front of the customer. You are failing in highly accelerated, contained sprint cycles internally.
Okay.
You iterate so rapidly that the failures just become the stepping stones to the final product in a matter of days, not months.
AI-augmented agile squads. That is the phrase from our deep dive that really demands some attention.
It's the key.
What does an AI-augmented agile squad actually look like when it hits the ground? Because this is where we really have to talk about the ROI of talent.
Right. So to build an execution engine that can escape that legacy gravity we talked about, you can't just rely on your internal team, no matter how good they are.
Yeah.
But you also can't just buy a piece of software and expect it to run itself. You need to architect a squad that possesses a hyper-specific blended DNA.
Blended DNA.
Yeah. On one side of that DNA strand, you need deep institutional business context.
Which is exactly what your existing internal staff provides.
Exactly.
They know where the bodies are buried in the legacy code. They know the bizarre idiosyncrasies of your top-tier clients. They know the specific compliance regulations of your specific niche in the finance industry. An outsider just can't learn that overnight.
Right. The internal team is the guardrail.
Yep.
But on the other side of that DNA strand, you need external technical mastery.
Oh, yeah.
You need people whose entire professional existence, every waking hour, is dedicated to the bleeding edge of AI deployment. You need people who have already fallen into the production chasm 3 times this year with other clients and know exactly where the traps are.
So the key to transformation is strategically injecting this specialized external talent directly into your execution engines, working alongside your existing staff.
Yes.
Wait, I need to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
I can hear a VP of engineering listening right now saying, hold on, you are just rebranding outsourcing. You're telling me to hire an external consulting firm, hand them the requirements document, let them build the AI feature, and then they throw it back over the wall to us. We've done that for years with offshore development.
That is the most crucial distinction we can make today, and I'm really glad you pushed back on that. It is absolutely not outsourcing.
How is it different?
Traditional outsourcing is fundamentally about bypassing your internal team. It's handing the problem away. You give an external firm the specs, they go into a black box, and they return with a finished product.
And what happens when they hand that black box back?
Total disaster. Because when that external team inevitably leaves, your internal team has no idea how the black box works.
Oh, right.
They don't understand the architectural decisions. They don't know how to update the prompts when the LLM shifts its behavior. They don't know how to fix the routing when an API breaks.
It just becomes a nightmare.
Yeah, the AI becomes massive, unmanageable technical debt on day one. Outsourcing an AI deployment is guaranteeing a maintenance nightmare.
So if it's not a handoff, what is the actual mechanism of co-creation?
Co-creation means you are strategically injecting specialized talent directly into your internal teams. They are sitting at the same metaphorical or even literal desk.
Okay.
The external specialist brings the raw, unadulterated AI deployment velocity. They bring the mastery of the newest routing frameworks, but they are building it with your internal staff.
So they're a team.
Exactly. Your internal people provide the contextual rails in real time. They review the code together, they write the prompts together, they solve those probabilistic to deterministic translation issues together.
You aren't replacing your staff. You're augmenting them.
Exactly.
You're building the capability internally while simultaneously getting the project across the finish line.
Precisely. But here is where the strategy gets incredibly nuanced. Scaling AI across a massive enterprise isn't just a blunt instrument.
Right. You can't just throw people at it.
No, you don't just drop a massive 20-person external squad into a department just to fix a minor bottleneck. That would be organizational overkill.
It's about precision. You have to adapt the talent solution to the specific bottleneck at hand. And the framework we are looking at maps out a dynamic spectrum of operational needs, broken down into 3 distinct tiers of talent intervention.
Yeah, let's walk through those.
Let's do it not just as a list, but as an escalating narrative of complexity. Because this is where the theoretical really shifts into a highly tactical playbook.
Let's start at the foundational level. Tier 1, the surgical implant.
Set the scene for us. What is the specific crisis where a surgical implant is the right lever to pull?
Imagine an internal team that is highly competent at traditional software engineering. They're building a customer-facing chatbot that's supposed to reference internal company documents to answer user queries.
Pretty standard use case.
Right. But the project is entirely stalled. It's stalled purely due to a lack of context orchestration.
What does that mean in practice?
It means the engineers are struggling to get the LLM to behave predictably. Sometimes it answers perfectly, other times it hallucinates wild company policies.
Good.
The engineers are trying to fix it by tweaking their Python code, but the problem isn't the Python. The problem is how they are structuring the prompt logic and the context retrieval.
So what do you do? Because you don't need a whole new engineering team for that.
No, you don't. You inject a single elite prompt engineer as a surgical implant directly into that existing pod.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If we think about this in human terms, it sounds exactly like bringing a master linguist into a high-stakes, deadlocked United Nations negotiation.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Imagine you have 2 brilliant diplomats. They completely understand international trade law that represents your internal engineering team, who understands your business logic perfectly.
Right.
But they literally do not speak the same language as the new foreign delegate they're negotiating with, and that delegate represents the LLM.
That's a great framing.
If your diplomats try to stumble through the negotiation using a cheat phrase book, they're going to offend the delegate and the talks will just stall out. The logic is there, but the translation is broken.
Exactly.
But if you surgically implant a master translator into the room, someone who doesn't just know the vocabulary but understands the exact cultural idioms, the syntactical nuances, and the precise phrasing required to convey complex legal intent to both sides, suddenly the communication flows flawlessly.
That is exactly what happens. The prompt engineer is providing that instant linguistic and architectural translation needed to unblock the development pipeline.
And that implant doesn't take over the project, right?
No, they don't try to become the lead diplomat. They simply unblock the communication layer. They provide the precise translation between the human intent of your engineers and the machine logic of the AI.
It's a low-friction, high-impact intervention.
Very high impact. But as we know, in enterprise software, the bottlenecks rarely stay isolated to just the prompt layer.
Oh, definitely not. So let's say Elena's team fixes the prompt translation with a surgical implant. The chatbot is working perfectly. But next quarter, the board says, Great, now we want this agent to handle voice calls, process uploaded images of bank statements, and automatically update the legacy mainframe.
The complexity just multiplied by 10.
Exactly. One prompt engineer cannot fix that plumbing. The bottleneck has shifted.
And that brings us to the next escalation. Tier 2, the hybrid accelerator. You deploy this when your internal teams aren't just stalled. They are completely overwhelmed by the infrastructural demands of the technology.
They understand what needs to be done strategically, but the sheer volume of new integration work is drowning them.
Exactly. They're trying to build the complex plumbing required for multi-agent systems. We're talking about massive API integrations, data pipeline modernization, and specifically multimodal routing.
I want to break down multimodal routing for a second, because it sounds like jargon, but it is actually the physical reality of how modern AI works. When we say multimodal routing, we aren't just talking about a text box anymore.
Not at all. Imagine a user uploads a PDF of a scanned receipt and also leaves a frantic voice note saying, "I need this reimbursed today."
Okay, two different types of inputs.
Right. The system has to receive both of those inputs.
Mm.
The multimodal router acts like a high-speed traffic controller. It takes the image of the receipt and writes it to a specialized vision model for optical character recognition. It simultaneously routes the voice note to an audio transcription model, like Whisper, to turn speech into text.
Right.
Then, it takes the output from both of those models, stitches them together, feeds them into an LLM with a specific system prompt to evaluate the reimbursement policy, extracts a structured JSON approval, and finally routes that JSON into the company's legacy ERP system to trigger a payment.
That is an incredibly complex sequence of events.
It really is.
It requires flawless API plumbing, error handling, and latency optimization.
Yeah.
And if you ask an internal team to build all of that multimodal routing from scratch, while they're also supposed to be maintaining the company's core legacy systems,
Yeah.
they will just sink into the quicksand.
They will fail. So the solution is the hybrid accelerator. You bring in external engineering specialists whose sole focus, their entire mandate, is to handle that heavy lifting. They come in and build the complex API structures, the routing logic, and the data pipelines.
But wait, look at this from the perspective of an internal engineering manager.
Yeah.
If you bring in an external heavy construction crew to build the plumbing, doesn't that make the internal team feel sidelined? How is this different from the outsourcing we condemned earlier?
It's different because of how the responsibilities are divided and because they're still working in the same shared environment. By offloading the massive, complex infrastructural plumbing to the external specialists, you are instantly unburdening your core internal staff.
You freeing them up.
You're liberating them. Instead of drowning in code and routing logic, which, frankly, the external specialist can build faster anyway, your internal people can elevate their gaze.
They move from being bricklayers to being architects.
Exactly. They focus on strategic alignment. They ensure that the AI outputs actually serve the customer's nuanced needs. They maintain the security guardrails, ensuring that the new routing logic doesn't violate company compliance.
So they manage the business logic, while the external specialists manage the execution logic.
Yes, they're accelerating the project symbiotically.
That makes perfect sense. You unburden your people so they can do what only they can do, understand your business. But then we reach the absolute top of the spectrum, the highest level of intervention. Tier 3, the full AI-augmented agile squad.
This is the big one.
If Tier 1 is a scalpel and Tier 2 is a heavy construction crew, Tier 3 sounds like the nuclear option. When do you push this button?
You deploy the full AI-augmented agile squad when you are facing an enterprise-wide overhaul.
Okay.
This isn't about unblocking a single feature or upgrading an API pipeline for one product. This is about completely reinventing a core business process using agentic AI from the ground up. And you need it done yesterday.
So how does this squad actually function at scale? If they're bypassing the legacy gravity, how are they structured?
The solution relies on deploying complete autonomous squads. These are fully self-sufficient teams. They include their own prompt engineers, their own data architects, integration specialists, UX designers, and agile scrum masters.
Wow, a whole unit.
And their operational mandate is to execute in highly aggressive sprint cycles.
Sprints. So we are talking about 2-week or 4-week cycles where they are forced to deliver functional software rather than spending 6 months in a planning phase.
Yes. They deliberately bypass the traditional corporate bureaucracy. They operate almost like a startup embedded within the enterprise.
Very cool.
Their entire goal is to turn theoretical foundations into production-ready minimum viable products, or MVPs, in a matter of weeks, not years.
Weeks, not years.
Exactly. They achieve the escape velocity required to break free from the legacy quicksand.
That is that initial velocity we discussed earlier. But I have to ask about the cultural impact of this.
Sure.
If you drop a highly aggressive, incredibly fast autonomous squad into the middle of an enterprise, and they start churning out MVPs in 3 weeks while the internal team is used to 3-month cycles,
Hey,
what happens to the internal team?
good question.
Do they just sit back in the bleachers, eat popcorn, and watch the full Agile squad do all the work? Because that sounds like a recipe for massive internal resentment.
If it were traditional outsourcing, yes, they would sit in the bleachers and they would absolutely resent the external team. But remember, the core philosophy here is co-creation. There is a profound secondary benefit to this model that often outlasts the technology itself.
What's
The osmosis effect.
osmosis, like absorbing knowledge through proximity? I want to drill into that. How does osmosis actually work in a highly technical software environment?
Well, when your internal teams are assigned to work alongside these specialized autonomous squads, even if the external squad is driving the primary sprint velocity, the internal team doesn't just observe.
I participate.
Yes, they participate, they review the pull requests, they sit in on the daily stand-ups, and by working in these rapid sprint cycles, rubbing shoulders daily with specialized technical talent who operate at the absolute cutting edge, your internal developers absorb the tempo.
They absorb the rhythm of how fast modern development is actually supposed to move.
Exactly. They absorb the agile methodologies. They see firsthand how to write exception handling for a probabilistic model. They learn the exact rigorous standards required to build and maintain high-fidelity production environments.
So it fundamentally rewires how your internal team thinks about shipping software.
It absolutely does.
That is a massive paradigm shift.
Yeah.
It means you aren't just buying a technical upgrade for your company's software suite. You are securing a permanent structural upgrade for your company's human capital.
Yes, the internal team is elevated by the experience. They become faster, more resilient, and more fluent in the new era of computing.
Which is the ultimate goal, right? You aren't just acquiring a product, you are acquiring the capability to build the next product yourselves.
Exactly.
And that brings us full circle back to Elena, our fintech CTO, who is staring into the abyss of the production chasm at the beginning of our deep dive.
Yes, let's bring Elena's narrative to a close.
So she started with a perfect setup, hit the wall when asked for ROI, realized her static strategy was a corporate hallucination, and recognized that her internal all-stars couldn't cross the chasm alone due to legacy gravity.
Right.
After moving through these phases and shifting her entire approach to AI-augmented co-creation, what is the final verdict? What actually happened to her fintech?
Well, by abandoning the linear model, dropping the illusion of the static whiteboard strategy, and embracing co-creation, she completely altered the trajectory of our company.
She didn't just end up with a theoretical roadmap.
No, she successfully crossed the chasm. She built a high-performance execution engine that delivered tangible industrial value to the board.
She proved the ROI. What did that look like in practice?
It meant deploying an autonomous AI agent that seamlessly handled 80% of their Tier 1 customer support inquiries, integrated perfectly with their legacy billing system without crashing it, and adhered to all financial compliance regulations.
Wow.
It meant reducing processing time for loan approvals from 3 days to 4 minutes.
And more importantly, her internal team was transformed. They weren't replaced by the machines, and they weren't sidelined by the external consultants.
No, they were elevated. They learned to operate seamlessly alongside those surgical implants and those hybrid accelerators. And because Elena built that combined talent architecture, her company achieved the ultimate prize. The ability to continuously push new AI-augmented features to the market faster than their competitors.
It creates a stark, almost brutal binary contrast in the industry right now. Theoretical AI is a cost center.
Yes, it is.
If you're just playing in the sandbox, paying for API calls, running isolated demos, generating fun images for your marketing deck, you are just bleeding money. You're a cost center.
But deployed, agentic AI is a market differentiator.
Exactly.
The moment you cross the chasm and deploy autonomous intelligence into real revenue-generating workflows, you separate yourself from your competitors in a way they just cannot catch up with.
It is the ultimate dividing line, and it creates a clear mandate for anyone leading a technology initiative today. If your organization is stuck in the sandbox, it is time to stop ideating and start deploying.
The future belongs to those who possess the talent architecture to execute. Not the ones with the best underlying technology, not the ones with the biggest budget, but the ones with the talent architecture to actually execute the vision.
That is a powerful mandate, and it brings us directly to you, our listener. We want to pivot and address you directly because the material we're exploring today explicitly includes community advice and questions designed for self-reflection.
Yes, it's time to look inwards.
We've talked about Elena, we've analyzed the Gartner data, and we've dissected the industry at large. But now, you need to look at your own organization, your own team, and your own career.
Absolutely.
There are three vital diagnostic questions you need to ask yourself, and you need to answer them with absolute honesty.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, what is the biggest technical or cultural bottleneck preventing your Gen AI proofs of concept from reaching full production? Is it the gravity of your legacy infrastructure? Is it a lack of sprint velocity? Or is it quiet sabotage from a team paralyzed by replacement anxiety?
That's a huge one. And second, have you explored injecting specialized talent, like a dedicated prompt engineer or a hybrid accelerator, to unblock your existing agile squads? Are you still stubbornly trying to force your traditional engineers to speak a probabilistic language they haven't mastered? Or are you ready to bring in the surgical implant to provide that translation?
And third, how does your current talent acquisition strategy account for the specialized skills needed to maintain these agentic workflows? Notice the emphasis on the word maintain.
Right, getting across the chasm is an incredible feat, but do you have the internal talent architecture strengthened by osmosis to keep those autonomous systems running safely and effectively over the next 5 years?
These are diagnostic tools to locate your specific point of failure. And if you're listening to those questions and realizing that you have massive gaps in your talent architecture, there are highly practical resources and roadmaps available to fill them.
Yes, there definitely are.
Could you briefly guide the listener through those specific pathways depending on where they find themselves in the operational spectrum?
Absolutely. The pathways are really designed around your specific need. So if you are an individual professional looking to accelerate your own career, or if you're struggling to land a role in this wildly shifting landscape, they provide mentoring and IT outplacement services to help you recalibrate your skills.
That's incredibly helpful.
And if you're on the enterprise side, if you're the one trying to build that execution engine and you need those high-value tech candidates, the surgical implants and the hybrid accelerators, they offer targeted IT headhunting services.
And what about the leadership teams? The executives who are trying to cure the corporate hallucination of a static strategy?
For professionals and HR leaders looking to truly understand implementation rather than just theory, they run specific AI programs like the AI Enterprise Transformation, as well as dedicated workshops for HR executives and HR operations.
Great.
And finally, for the technology leaders, the CTOs like Elena, who are ready to bridge the evolution gap and require a massive enterprise-wide overhaul, they offer the ATLA's Enterprise AI Transformation and Strategy. It's basically a comprehensive suite designed precisely to build the bridge across the production chasm.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. We've looked at the deceptive safety of the sandbox, the graveyard of the production chasm, the hallucinations of static strategy, the F1 engine ripping apart the legacy chassis, and the absolute imperative of co-creation over traditional outsourcing.
It's been a lot to unpack.
It has. But I want to offer one final thought that builds directly on everything we've unpacked today.
Okay.
If the gap between a corporate hallucination and a true market differentiator is purely about how you architect your human talent, then we have to fundamentally rethink what an AI skill actually is.
How do you define it, given everything we've discussed?
Well, everyone assumes the ultimate AI skill of the future is deeply technical. They think it's coding, or mastering Python, or understanding the mathematical weights of a neural network.
Right, the hard technical skills.
But based on the reality of the production chasm, I don't think that's true at all. I think the ultimate AI skill of the future is extreme human collaboration.
Extreme human collaboration. That is a fascinating pivot.
Think about it. The bottlenecks aren't in the silicon. The bottlenecks are in how people work together. The ultimate skill is the ability to seamlessly integrate your own internal human intelligence with external human specialists and with autonomous machine intelligence, all simultaneously at lightning speed.
Wow. Yeah.
It's about being the conductor of an orchestra, where half the players are human, half the players are machines. The sheet music is probabilistic and constantly rewriting itself, and you still have to deliver a flawless symphony to the audience.
That is a phenomenal way to frame the future of work. The technology is just the instrument. Extreme human collaboration, the talent architecture, is how you actually play the symphony.
So think back to that beautiful blueprint for the rocket ship or that F1 engine drawn on the whiteboard. Don't just stare at the drawing and marvel at how smart the math is. Look around at your team. Look at your talent architecture and ask yourself, do we have the builders, the implants, and the extreme collaboration required to actually construct this engine and launch it out of the chasm?
A great question to leave off on.
This was Next Gen Tech, Talent and Trends.
Thank you for joining us in this conversation where knowledge becomes direction.
I hope this episode offered you a useful pause, a boost of inspiration, or even a starting point for what's ahead.
We hope to have left you with ideas, questions, and, most importantly, the drive to keep building your path in the world of technology and talent.
Leave us a comment, share this with your team, and help us keep growing the conversation.
Follow us on social media at Sequoia Connect, and remember, the future doesn't just happen, it's built with talent, technology, and purpose.
We are Silva, and we'll catch you in the next episode.